We went on, and when we went past going up, the water was still coming out of the dam, just terrible. And I remember that as though it was yesterday. The water was up over the general office buildings. Everything went on fire. We lost quite a lot of property. Everything was gone. Everything. The guards were there would shoot you if you take anything.
The area of Johnstown, Pennsylvania was drowned by the largest storm to hit the area in the 19th century on Memorial Day, transitioning into May 31st, 1889. Lake Conemaugh rose around 9 inches an hour, something the constructors of the South Fork Dam never expected. Even before the flood hit, Johnstown was already experiencing one of its worst floods ever, from the Conemaugh River and Stony Creek overflowing a foot of water into the town. People understood what to do and packed to move to higher ground. Suddenly, at 3:10 p.m., the severely damaged South Fork Dam collapsed. 20 million tons of lake water wreaked havoc on towns below. Within the 4 square miles of downtown Johnstown, everything was wiped, including 1,600 homes, resulting in a total of $17 million in property damage. Johnstown, Pennsylvania is located in the narrow valleys of the Allegheny Mountains and at the meeting point of the Conemaugh River and Stony Creek. It is located 76 miles east of a once global steel powerhouse, Pittsburgh. This is important considering the role that the industry had on the city. Carnegie Steel had been mass-producing steel for years at that point and left the city in a never-ending cycle of all types of pollution. Johnstown has always been and still is susceptible to floods because of its location on the rivers and runoff of snow and rain from the mountains. But these floods are nowhere near the danger of the deadliest flood in American history, the Johnstown Flood of 1889. It starts in South Fork, Pennsylvania, a smaller town located 10 miles northeast of Johnstown. At the time, South Fork was mainly known for having the best retreat for only the wealthiest businessmen to go to, the South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club. People like Andrew Carnegie would escape often from the immensely crowded, polluted, and poverty Pittsburgh. The club was located on Lake Conemaugh, formed by the South Fork Dam. It was fully built in 1853 during an abnormally dry season for Johnstown. This is important, knowing that more than a foot of water would rush over the dam. The dam was originally bought in 1875 by a Pennsylvania Railroad employee and U.S. Congressman John Riley to be used for railroads. Finances made the two remove the 5 sluice pipes at the bottom of the dam that regulated overflowing water and sold them as metal scrap. This would again be important, knowing that since there was nowhere for the extra water to go, it would put more pressure on the dam itself. Eventually, Benjamin Ruff decided to buy the dam and the reservoir in 1879 to then sell it to the newly formed South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club. Wealthy businessman Henry Frick represented the South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club and bought the dam. Significant damage had already been done by Ruff, though. The dam had already removed the sluice pipes, lowered the top of the dam to make it wider for carriages, and put fish screens over the spillway. This gradually became the cause of the Great Flood because of the high water and the low capacity of the dam. On the day of the 31st, rain consistently added 9 inches per hour to the lake. As the day continued, the low barrier of the dam let a considerable amount of water leak over the top. Eyewitness Reverend G.E.W. Brown, pastor of the South Fork United Brethren Church, wrote, "When I approached, the water was running over the breast of the dam to the depth of about a foot. The first break in the earthen surface made a few minutes later was large enough to admit the passenger train of cars." This is when people were sent to start raising the dam, but it was a failed attempt. The dam broke at 3:10 p.m., and a large wave, the force of Niagara Falls, followed with 20 million tons of water. Reverend G.E.W. Brown also stated, "The dam melted away oh how quickly. Only a few moments were required to make an opening more than 300 feet wide and down to the bottom. I watched it until the wall that held back the waters was torn away, and the entire lake began to move, and until, finally, with a tremendous rush that made the hills quake, the vast body of water was poured into the valley below. Only about 45 minutes were required to precipitate those millions of tons of water upon the unsuspecting inhabitants of the Conemaugh Valley, and right here it began its work of destruction. Knocking down everything in its path, the now 70-foot-tall wave filled with a variety of debris was headed straight for Johnstown at 4 p.m. The force was so strong, a violent wind hit the town first and knocked over small buildings. The town had been put under 10 to 30 feet of swirling water for a quick but deadly 20 minutes. The water would drain and leave behind debris and complete destruction of their town. That excess water would part into the Stony Creek and Conemaugh rivers. Bodies were found as far away as Cincinnati and as late as 1911. Even worse, the entirety of the rubble was soaked in oil from a train that would soon catch fire. The fiery mountain of debris left around 600 people entangled in it. Only 80 made it out. The Johnstown flood detrimentally affected the environmental, economic, and social aspects of Johnstown and surrounding areas. Environmentally, the flood caused complete destruction to everything crossing its path. Before the wave even reached Johnstown, a smaller town near South Fork called Mineral Point was completely wiped with nothing but mud left behind. All of the debris was picked up and added onto the large wave fiercely descending towards Johnstown. Along with the towns, most plants and animals in the area were wiped. Nothing but mud and debris was left behind in the flood's path, and 2,208 people would end up succumbing to the flood. Economically, the flood destroyed or did immense damage to all of Johnstown and its industries, and required a full rebuild which costed $550 million in today's currency. Better yet, Johnstown's main steel company, Cambria Iron Works, was opened back up on June 6, not even a week after the flood. Although it was not hit as hard as another steel company, Gautier Works, which was fully destroyed. Cambria Iron Works would work to reproduce the train tracks that were ripped as a result of the flood. Socially, the flood was the first major disaster the American Red Cross aided. Without the Red Cross, Johnstown most likely would not have been able to rebuild, nor even clean up the pile of the deceased. News coverage of the Johnstown flood and the relief effort helped establish the American Red Cross as the major disaster relief agency in the United States. Although, when disaster struck, some took it as an opportunity to steal. For days to weeks, thieves stole the valuables they can find in the rubble to hopefully resell. As a witness and a Pittsburgh businessman, Charles F. Jan was the first known verbal report, and he states, "There is not enough help here. The people need assistance badly. A couple of regiments should be sent to the scene at once, as vandals of the lowest order are on the ground and all sorts of stealing is going on." While some viewed it as an opportunity, some were quick to blame. This blame was mainly directed towards the South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club, but mostly Henry Frick for not keeping the dam's maintenance. Frick tried to soften the fall by donating thousands of dollars towards the relief effort, but citizens did not accept his apology. The industrial era standards of work had already set Frick and his co-partner Andrew Carnegie in a bad light. These two facts together make the Homestead Strike of 1892 and Frick's attempted assassination much more sensible. Although, nobody ended up taking blame, nor did any court award any compensation for the flood's damages. The Johnstown Flood of 1889 is a catastrophic turning point and arguably the most calamitous flood in American history. The high death total and the complete destruction of most life forms and structures left the Johnstown area drowning in rubble. In fact, the death total was so high that it was the deadliest single-day tragedy until the Pearl Harbor attacks. Along with the immense destruction, the flood gave a very debatable question to the civilians of Johnstown: rebuild or abandon the town? If the people of Johnstown had not been so courageous, we may not have had Johnstown today. Better yet, these now homeless people would most likely have had to move to the already crowded Pittsburgh. They would have had to find work in the unsafe working conditions in Carnegie's industrial-era steel powerhouse to get barely minimum wage. Along with the working conditions, they would have added immensely to the cramped tenements and the continuous pollution. Though, the reason that the town was not abandoned was the fast and abundant support of the Red Cross. The Red Cross set up hotels and provided supplies for the victims. Journalists quickly picked up on the headline. This made the American Red Cross the main disaster relief agency in the U.S. within weeks to months. This is important considering the American Red Cross would aid more than 70,000 disasters nationwide after. Knowing that social media was not around either, the fact the Red Cross was able to popularize itself to be known nationwide with just newspapers proves how taxing the flood was. The flood also helped push the American legal system to shift from a fault-based system to one of strict liability. A fault-based system is essentially when the victims are liable for their losses unless the injurer is at fault. This is like when the flood left thousands of people to deal with their own property damages with little to nothing in their pockets. A strict liability system involves consequences no matter if there is proof of fault. Under this, Henry Frick and the South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club would most likely have taken responsibility for the hundreds of millions of dollars in damages.